Hello and welcome back, Curious Minds. You're listening to Threads of Tomorrow, Crafting Textiles.
This is Season 2, Episode 8. It's great to be back.
It really is, and we have a very special deep dive prepared for you. This one is brought to you by the wonderful team at omemy.com.
That's omemy.com.
Exactly. Today, we're going to be exploring a story that, well, it really touched my heart. And I think it might just change the way you look at the clothes hanging in your closet right now.
It's a fascinating topic. We often wear things without really thinking about where they came from or the hands that made them.
Right. And today we're going to slow that down and look at the process really closely. And speaking of slowing down, we're going to keep our conversation today nice and clear, moving at a comfortable, steady pace.
Right.
We really want to make sure everyone, including our friends learning English, can follow along.
It's an incredible journey.
It is. So let's jump right into our source material. It's a travel diary, a really detailed blog post written by a traveler named Rachel.
And Rachel isn't just any traveler. She and her partner, Mark, they describe themselves as those travelers. You know the type.
Oh, I think I do. The experts.
Exactly. Expert navigators.
Yeah.
They've been to Prague, Paris, London. They know exactly where to get the best coffee in Rome.
They can probably get through the London Underground without even looking at a map.
That's the picture she paints. But here's the catch. In the blog post, Rachel admits something pretty surprising. She says they were bored.
Bored with all that.
Yeah. They felt like they were just, and I'm quoting here, circling the same cultural territory. They wanted something different, something culture-rooted and constructive.
That's a feeling I think a lot of people can relate to. You're consuming, but maybe you're not really learning.
Precisely. And for them, the shift came from Mark. He suggested a massive pivot, a trip to India, specifically to Rajasthan.
Wow, that's a huge change from Paris or London.
It is, but it makes perfect sense. I mean, if you're looking for deep constructive travel, you go to a place with one of the oldest civilizations in the world.
So they put together an itinerary.
They did. And it wasn't just workshops. They did the tourist things, too. The source mentions the city palace in Jaipur, Lake Pichola in Udaipur.
The Golden Fort in Jaisalmer, all these beautiful historic places.
Yes, but the core of our deep dive today isn't about a palace. It's about day 4 of their trip, a visit to a small printing workshop in a town called Sanganer, just near Jaipur.
And their goal was to understand how a single morning in a dusty workshop could change their entire outlook on what travel is even for.
It's a remarkable story.
So let's set the scene. It's 9 in the morning, and Rachel says they're already sweating, it's hot, and they arrive at this workshop. And from the outside, it's really unassuming. A low structure, open courtyards. You might just walk right past it.
But inside, it's a world of color. And this is where they meet their instructor, a man named Prakash.
I love the description of Prakash. The first thing Rachel notes is his hands.
Oh, that detail is so powerful.
She says his hands were permanently stained with indigo blue and madder red. Like he was wearing gloves, but it was just his skin.
That's the mark of a master, isn't it? Decades of work right there on his hands. And he starts their lesson with this really powerful quote. He asks them if they've seen block printing in shops.
And of course they say yes, they've seen it everywhere.
And Prakash just smiles and says, good, now forget everything you think you know. We start from the beginning.
I love that. Forget everything. It just sets such a humble tone. And before we go further, I just want to remind everyone, if you want to read Rachel's full story, you can find it at omemy.com.
That's omemy.com. It's a great read.
It really is. So the beginning. The first thing Prakash shows them are the blocks themselves.
Right. And Rachel describes this wall just filled with thousands of them, wooden blocks.
She expected something like, a simple rubber stamp, but these are works of art. Prakash picks one up and says, this is history, mathematics, and art combined.
And he's absolutely right. Most traditional blocks are made of teak wood. Now, why teak?
It's a very hard wood, isn't it?
It's very hard, yes, and dense. But more importantly, it has this high natural oil content that makes it water resistant.
Oh, so it won't warp from the dye.
Exactly. If you used a softer wood, it would soak up the water, it would swell, and it would crack in a week. A good teak block can last for 50 years.
50 years. That's incredible longevity for a tool.
It has to be durable.
Yeah.
And the craftsmanship to carve them is just immense. Prakash explains that a simple paisley design that might take 3 or 4 days to carve,
Okay.
But a complex one, like a peacock with all these fine feathers and details, that can take a master carver 2 full weeks.
And they have to work in reverse. That just blows my mind.
It's a huge mathematical challenge. They use geometry for symmetry. And this brings us to the history. This craft isn't new.
No, not at all. Prakash told them it goes back 5,000 years.
5,000, all the way back to the Indus Valley Civilization. I mean, to put that in context, Indian printed textiles were being traded across Asia while the Vikings were just starting to explore the seas.
It's that old.
But it faced a massive threat, of course, the Industrial Revolution.
Right. Suddenly, factories could produce prints in hours that took artisans days.
And it nearly killed the craft. But families like Prakash's, they kept it alive. They passed the knowledge down father to son. And then in the 60s and 70s, there was a revival.
People rediscovered the beauty of handmade things.
They did. Which brings us to the alchemy of the workshop, the colors.
Yes, Rachel was fascinated by this. She said it looked more like a chemistry lab than an art studio.
It's where science meets art. Traditionally, they use natural dyes. Indigo for blue, madder root for red, turmeric for yellow.
And that mix of fermented iron and jaggery for black.
And Prakash had this funny analogy for natural dyes. He compared them to a relationship.
He did. He said you have to approach them with respect and patience, like a partner.
Because you can't fully control the outcome. They're affected by the weather, the water. You have to work with them.
So poetic. But they do use synthetic dyes now, too, for consistency.
Yes, azo-free synthetics. But here's the really crucial technical part. Viscosity.
Viscosity, that's a great word. So for anyone listening, it basically means how thick a liquid is. Like water versus honey.
Exactly. You can't just dip a block in watery dye. It would run everywhere. It has to be a paste. So they use natural thickeners like gum from tree resin or tamarind seed powder.
And getting that mixture right is a skill in itself.
It's the Goldilocks zone. Too thick, the pattern is clumpy. Too thin, it bleeds and looks faded. Prakash just mixes it by eye and feel. It's not a recipe from a book.
So you have the block, you have the paste, now you need the canvas. Rachel talks about the printing table, which sounds simple, but it's a precision instrument.
Absolutely critical. The base is solid teak, so it won't warp. But the top is covered with 20 to 30 layers of fabric padding.
Why so many layers?
To provide give. When the printer presses down, the soft surface absorbs the pressure evenly. On a hard table, the print would be all patchy.
Okay, so we have the tools. Now comes the part that really surprised Rachel, the math.
Chuckles. Yes. I think she expected to just start stamping randomly.
I think most people would.
But it's more like architectural drafting. Before any dye touches the fabric, Prakash uses a chalk line and a ruler. He has to calculate. Say the fabric is 180 centimeters long and the block is 15 centimeters.
That's, I think, 12 repeats.
Exactly. But it has to be perfect. If the pattern is a continuous vine, it has to look like one vine, not 12 separate blocks. The alignment has to be precise.
That is incredible discipline. And, speaking of discipline and learning new things, I want to take a quick moment to share something with you all.
Yes, if you're enjoying this deep dive, you should definitely join the Omni.com WhatsApp community.
It's called Devi the Curious. Yeah. It's a wonderful space to keep informed about new deep dives like this one, blogs, tools, and even live workshops we put together.
And it's so easy to join. You can just scan the QR code that's on the poster for this deep dive.
Absolutely. Devi the Curious. It's the best way to stay connected. So back to the workshop. The math is done. The chalk lines are there. It's time for Rachel and Mark to actually try printing.
And this is where reality hits. Rachel describes the steps. Dip the block, just the surface, tap off the excess, position it, press firmly, lift.
It sounds so easy when you say it, but her first print was, well, a disaster.
I can imagine.
Blotchy and crooked. It took her 6 attempts just to get one that was acceptable.
And the corners. Turning a corner with a border pattern is so difficult. Masters do it by feel, but beginners, they struggle with that L shape.
This is where the biggest insight of the trip came for them, though. Rachel realized that while a machine can do this perfectly, it lacks something.
The human element. Prakash explained it so well. Machine printing is perfect, but it's dead. Block printing is imperfect, but it's alive.
Those little variations.
Yeah.
That's what makes it valuable.
Yeah.
It shows a human hand was there.
Exactly. I love that distinction. After the printing, there's also the aftercare, isn't there?
Oh, yes. You dry it in the shade, wash it in cold water. And here's a fascinating fact. Unlike industrial prints that fade, natural block prints actually mature.
Mature, like a fine wine.
That's it, exactly. Over 50 years, the fabric softens, gets that patina, and the colors deepen and settle. It gets better with age.
That's beautiful.
And this leads to the emotional climax of her story. She's looking at this imperfect table runner she made. Crooked corners, the center is a bit off, but she feels this immense pride.
It's that shift from seeing to understanding. Before, an expensive scarf was just a pretty object.
But now she realized what she was actually paying for.
For the carver who spent weeks on the block, for the die maker, the printer's aching back, the mathematician's planning.
It wasn't just cloth anymore. It was a repository of thousands of years of knowledge.
That's the power of that kind of travel. You stop being just a consumer.
And there's this funny story about Mark. Back in Stockholm, Rachel says he's become insufferable in shops.
Chuckles. Oh, I can just picture it.
He goes into boutiques and starts explaining to the sales assistants the difference between real block printing and screen printing.
He's on a mission, but it comes from a genuine place.
It does. And Rachel changed, too. She had this pristine scarf she was afraid to wear. Now she wears it all the time. She wants to live with it, let it age.
That's a beautiful takeaway. It really shows how this wasn't just another tourist stop for them.
It changed their values.
It moved them from just seeing the world to understanding it. And that's what true craftsmanship teaches us.
Absolutely. Well, as we start to wrap up, I hope this story has inspired all of you to look a little closer at the textiles in your own life.
And remember, this incredible story was brought to you by omemy.com. That is OMEMY.com. You can head over there to read Rachel's full blog post.
And don't forget to join our community, Davey the Curious, on WhatsApp. Just scan that QR code on the poster. We would love to have you.
And please, post in the comment box. Tell us what you want to hear about next. We really want to explore the things that you are curious about.
We will definitely be back with more such content, so please follow our podcast and stay tuned. Thank you so much for listening today.
Before we go, I'd like to leave you with one final thought. The next time you pick up a piece of fabric or any handcrafted item, ask yourself, if this object could talk, would it tell a story of a machine's speed or a human's patience? And which story would you rather wrap yourself in?